yourself. Tell us about your hobbies. Tell us about your journey. Who is Maria Fox?
Okay, well, I am 51, as you said, and my journey actually started when I was 50, but it crossed 10 months from being 50 into 51. So um, I was brought up in the southeast of England in the UK. So I'm in the UK. You'll guess that by the accent, I'm sure. And I am a police officer and have been a police officer for 27 years. I'm a senior leader in the police service, so I'm a superintendent in the middle of the UK. And actually, when I grew up, I was a really sporty young person. I was always playing hockey or netball or soccer, any sport, actually. I loved sport. Grew up in a family, I was probably the more sporty one. My younger brother was quite sporty as well. So I was always into sport, but kind of from the age of probably 14, I always struggled with gaining weight. Now, when I say gaining weight, I wasn't super heavy when I was in my teenage years, but I actually was heavier than I am now, which is quite something, really. So anyway, I finished school. I still played competitive sport through university. I did a degree at university in theology, and biblical studies, a bit of a different sort of subject. And then I went into policing, and I worked in the Northwest. I've worked in crime. I've worked in local policing and neighborhood policing and uniform policing. So I've done a lot of different roles in the police. And the police is quite a stressful kind of role, but I love it. I've loved it. Every minute of it's been brilliant. And I guess that brings me to when I hit kind of 49, 50. I suppose in my 40s, I lost weight at the beginning. It actually is quite significant that all the way through my adult life, I had this kind of up, down, up, down, up, down with my weight. So I lost weight to join the police. I gained it a bit more back. I then lost weight again at the beginning of my 40s. And then I gained it back. And as I approached the kind of perimenopause time, when I started sort of 48, 49, towards being 50, the weight just came on really quickly. Now, I was actually quite fit during that period. When I say fit, I was cardiovascularly quite fit. So I had a VO2 max of around 40, which wasn't bad for that kind of for my age. You know, I was in the top, I think 5% for my age and gender. I taught indoor cycle. I'd got qualified as an indoor cycle instructor back in 2013. So I'd done exercise to music qualification group exercise. And then, so despite liking all those sporty things, cycling, skiing, still playing tennis, still liking sport, I just struggled to keep the weight off. And I would, anytime I got an injury, I would just gain weight really quickly because I wouldn't be as active during that period. So my weight maintenance was solely kind of reliant on really exercise. But as I approached 50, the weight gain just came really, really accelerated. And I think that was a combination of things. It's very interesting. You know, I did a DNA test, and that's a subject in itself in terms of what the findings were of my DNA. My DNA was I had a propensity towards stress-related obesity. My DNA said I'd have a likely larger waist circumference. Persistent thinness was very unlikely. So there was quite a lot of things in my DNA, sensitive to fat, sensitive to carbs. So, you know, I almost had a genetic predisposition, which wasn't great anyway. And I'll be really honest, you know, I wasn't eating very healthily at that point, either 48, 49, 50, but I had all the hormonal stuff going on, all the stress going on at work, and my weight shot up to around 93 kilograms. So pretty big.
How much is that in pounds now? I
think
don't
it's
follow
about
kilograms.
206 pounds, I think.
Ah, got you.
£7, £208, something around there. It must be, because if I've lost 60 pounds and I'm about 149 now, it must be around 207, 208. So anyway, so I then had this so I wasn't very well, actually. So in the months leading up to me kind of hitting this top weight, I ended up with having a superficial blood clotting episode called thrombophlebitis. And then 6 weeks after that, I actually suffered a proper blood clot. I had a DVT, deep vein thrombosis. Yeah. And then about 6 weeks after that, I had an ECG diagnosed condition called supraventricular tachycardia, which they wanted to do an intervention around. And then 6 weeks after that, I just hit a wall, burnt out, ended up having to be off work, chronic fatigue, in a right kind of mess. But at the very same time that I hit that mess, I bought a Lumen device. And I bought the Lumen device because I was really fed up with being overweight. And I saw an advert on Facebook with Chris Froome, the cyclist. And because I'm a big cycling fan, he was using it for fitness performance, obviously. But in the advert, it talked about how Lumen help you become more metabolically flexible and how Lumen help your body to burn fats and burn carbs. And I just thought to myself, well, if it's good enough for Chris Froome, it's good enough for me to try. And they had this kind of 30-day money back guarantee thing, and it said basically you can try this, and if you don't want it after 30 days, you can send it back. So it was really timed to perfection in the sense that suddenly I'm off work, I'm not well, I hadn't got any other way of kind of navigating this new place that I was in, and I knew that I had to look after myself better. And here I had this Lumen device that was kind of giving me a plan every day. So the Lumen gave me a structure every day, which was massively helpful because I needed something to give me a bit of a structure around my health. And then I guess it's just fast forward, and then suddenly making those right choices every day. We'll talk about the journey, but I think back now and I kind of think, how on earth, in that really difficult, dark place mentally, because I was in a dark place mentally, did I find the kind of mojo or motivation to make the decisions every day to follow the Lumen plan? But I guess once you start to see progress, you start to get momentum. Yeah.
That's right. And you just touched on a lot right there. And I have a few things I'm definitely
Okay.
going to elaborate on. And
Okay.
I'm going to do this part through steps. I'm
Okay.
going to start off with the genetic piece, right?
Okay.
Because I grew up in Jamaica. I kind of think you know this, but people used to say to me all the time, like, I'm big bone. If they're overweight, they're like, I'm big bone. Everybody in my family is big bone. I, to this day, still have no idea what that means. But I was like, I don't care about your bone. I'm talking about the fat that surrounds it. But anyway, they would say that's why I'm overweight, because it's a genetic thing, right?
Yeah.
So then a lot of us feel like, you know what? I can't get out of this. This is my genetics. It's just what it is. But then there's a newer branch of science called epigenetics.
Yeah.
And epigenetics is, you can't change your genes, but you can change how they operate.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
the things that you do, the lifestyle that you have, the foods that you eat, your activities, so many things can
Yeah.
go into how your genes actually operate, and you can turn some on,
Yeah.
you can turn some off.
Yeah.
And that's the importance of epigenetics. So then now we're going to talk about Lumen and what Lumen actually is, because it's not a magic device. It's not something that I just came out of my bum with yesterday. It really, when you blow into Lumen, it tells you if you're primarily burning fat or if
Yeah.
you're primarily burning carbs. And
Absolutely.
the key thing with Lumen too is your morning measurement, because when
Yeah.
you measure in the morning, it tells you where you're burning carbs when you were asleep, or where you're burning fats is what you're supposed to. Most of us don't burn fats when we're sleeping. So we're actually burning carbs, which points to the fact that we're not metabolically flexible. So when you start to make epigenetic changes, when Lumen gives you recommendations for what you should eat and give you some guidance, and then we have also experts like myself and Maria who are in the Facebook group who answers questions and give you guidance. Sometimes I talk about how you should work out or where you can make adjustments, and we piggyback off each other and we help each other and we defer to each other based on our levels of expertise. You then start to realize that you can start to break down fats because you have more lipase to do so. And then you can also break down carbs because you have more amylase. Because I want to say this about amylase and lipase. Human beings, actually, of all the mammals in the world, are naturally born with more amylase on average than any other mammal in the world. So, theoretically speaking, we should be able to survive on a high carb diet. But there's a lot that goes into it. The way we've eaten over time ruins our metabolism, our lifestyles ruin our metabolism, and so many things happen that can ruin our mental. And also too, geographic diversity. If, like example, if you're from the Inuit culture where there are more of a high high meat carnivore diet type of lifestyle, they're gonna have more lipase for breaking down fat that they are gonna have amylase. For somebody like myself, who was born and raised in Jamaica, ate fruits all my life. So there's so much. So naturally, yes, we are naturally born with more amylase, but there's so many things that alters that. So lumen gives you that reading. And as you start to realize, you know what? I'm eating fat, but I'm not gaining weight. I'm eating carbs, I'm not gaining weight. I'm eating this much protein, I feel better. My workouts are better. I have more energy, and so on and so forth. Then you start to realize the difference and you start to feel better. And the big thing, you're not starving yourself. In a lot of cases, I hear people in the group complain that they get more food than what they're used to eating, but I just tell them, trust the process. And eventually, things start to happen.
Yeah, I do.
So when you in the beginning, right? Because you talked about how you discovered Lumen.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, do you have any like, what were your struggles or questions?
I mean, actually, the genetic thing really leads into that. So I, because my gene, I already did a DNA test about 3 years ago. I did one with DNA Fit, and that was back in 2017, 2018. And I knew that I had a low metabolic kind of rate, resting metabolism. I knew that I had more of a disposition towards strength training, but I didn't really like strength training at this point. And I had a less of a, towards endurance. And then I had this